Hi everyone, my name is Jimmy Smith. I am a proud member of the Cathedral Prep class of 2011, and I have the pleasure of working here at Prep in our Advancement and Alumni Relations office. Welcome to episode number 108 of the Rambler Podcast. We are passionate about sharing what makes Cathedral Prep the standard of excellence, and we are very excited to welcome Damion Terry on as a guest. Damion graduated from Cathedral Prep in 2013, where his remarkable athletic journey began. A standout quarterback for the Ramblers, Damion led the team to a state championship his senior year, where his exceptional talent, leadership, and dedication on the gridiron earned him a full athletic scholarship to Michigan State University. From 2013 to 2018, Damion represented Erie on the national stage as a quarterback for the Spartans. Over his 5 unforgettable years in East Lansing, he contributed to one of the most successful eras in Michigan State football history, graduating with a legacy defined by resilience, teamwork, and elite competition. Following his collegiate career, Damion returned home to Erie for a year, transitioning his competitive drive into the business world at Federal Resources Corporation, working under a fellow Cathedral Prep alumnus and company owner, Jeremy Young, Cathedral Prep class of 1994, who, by the way, has also been a guest here on the podcast with us, who Jeremy had strategically just relocated the business back to Erie. And Damion gained some invaluable foundational experience in corporate operations and regional development. The game of football soon called him back to the sidelines for the 2019 season, where he served as an assistant coach for Cornell University, mentoring Ivy League student athletes. Following his coaching tenure, Damion re-entered the corporate workplace and relocated to Boston to join the Boston Beer Company. His dynamic work ethic quickly led to a promotion that brought him closer to home, where he managed territories in the Pittsburgh area. Beyond his professional achievements in Boston, Damion also conquered a major personal milestone by earning a spot in, running, and completing the historic 2023 Boston Marathon. Today, Damion has successfully merged his passion for athletics with his corporate expertise, and for the past 2 years, he has resided in Fort Myers, Florida, working for the Minnesota Twins organization as the Partner Services Coordinator for their Single A affiliate, the Fort Myers Mighty Mussels. In this role for Damion, he spearheads corporate partnership fulfillment and sponsorship deliverables, remaining a vital player in the business of professional sports. Damion has also been inducted into the Cathedral Prep Athletic Hall of Fame and was nominated to the Erie Athletic Hall of Fame as well. So, Damion, welcome to the podcast, my man.
Jimmy, thanks for having me, my man. It's funny, this is my first ever podcast, and it's nice to, bring it all back to where, my name kind of started and, the place that gave me the foundation for everything. So I'm honored to be here today and ready to get into it.
Well, and I always have so much fun with the podcast, getting to meet new people, reconnect with old friends. But me and you, man, we go back a long time when we were 10, 11, 12 years old.
Long time, my man, on the Diamond 9, playing baseball out there, over at Carl Mango, the FOP days. It feels like it was yesterday, man, building that camaraderie, getting to know everyone about you and your family, and then going to Blessed Sacrament, with Alexa, your sister, going off the prep where you were, I think you were a junior or senior by the time I probably got there, but, building a relationship with Connor, who's now, your brother-in-law, to Alex, full circle moment. The Smith and Co. voices have meant so much to me. So we go way back, and it's nice to touch up and, catch up, see how you and your family are doing. It's awesome seeing how good of a dad you are and learning about that. So I'm ready to, have a day and, talk about some Rambler ball and stuff. So let's do it.
That's right. Yeah, absolutely. Well, I feel honored that I'm the first person to be able to host Damion Terry on for a podcast.
Hey.
You're an Erie legend, man, going on to what you did here at Prep. Or I should say, doing what you did here at Prep, then going on to Michigan State University. You've done some really cool things in your career, and I'm excited for people who have maybe just heard your name to get to know you better by some of these conversations that we'll have today. And just being able to share those topics and whatnot is going to be great.
I agree, man. I'm excited. I'm usually a close to the chest person, so this is nice. It's going to be nice to talk about it. I never really talk myself up, so going down memory lane a little bit, reliving that experience is going to be awesome. I'm really looking forward to it.
Good. Well, let's start here, Damion. You were obviously, a very athletic kid growing up. I'm sure you could have picked any high school even to start there with where you wanted to take your, athletic talents. What made Cathedral Prep the right choice for you?
Honestly, Jimmy, my mind was made up long before eighth grade year, getting ready to go into high school. I knew I wanted to be a Rambler the second I attended the Rambler ball camp, actually, the football camp back in, I think I was in fourth or fifth grade. Getting to play alongside the kids who eventually became my classmates, teammates, and lifelong best friends made an immediate impression on me. I remember looking up to the older prep players back then, the Satterfield twins, Jason Fabler, who was my coach then personally. And, I just remember looking up to them, not just because how big they actually were, but because of how they carried themselves, interacted with us. It was clear, that prep was instilling character into them, leadership, and a sense of community in them. And I knew right then and there what I wanted for myself. And then what I remember most, about my prep years is the brotherhood, the culture of excellence, that surrounded us every day, walking those halls, competing under Friday night lights and grinding alongside, my best friends still to this day, that created memories that haven't faded at all. My group chat with all my high school friends is called Friday Night Lights, and the profile pictures, the CP logo. So it just carries on with you, and it's just an everlasting impression. But more than the wins and stuff, I remember the standards our coaches and teachers set for us. Cathedral Prep wasn't just about preparing for you for the next game or exam. It was more about shaping how you carried yourself as a man, a leader, and a teammate for your rest of your life. So that's when I knew when I wanted to be a Rambler, and that's kind of what being a Rambler means to me.
That's awesome. And it's great to hear about those experiences. You threw out some great names that it's a Jason Fabler. I think he was a junior when I was a freshman, and Akeem Satterfield was a senior when I was a freshman. Yeah, those guys were larger than life, when you kind of first come to prep and you see how big physically they are.
Exactly.
And then you get to know some of those guys, and they're just high character people, pursuing excellence, and that brotherhood you speak of just really resonates with me as well, because it's so true.
It really is. And, it's easy to see, even at a young age, when you're naive to the world still. And, Jason was this large, I think he played offensive tackle for us, and he eventually went on to go to William and Mary. But he was just this big, goofy guy, and it just felt right. It just felt like I was still talking with all the fourth grade guys, but on a high school level. And he just meant so much to all of us and left an everlasting impression on me. And even to this day, if I run into him, I always bring that up on how much he actually meant to me and stuff. So it carries itself a long lasting while.
And that's I love to hear about the Friday Night Lights group chat. And the other fun fact most people maybe don't know, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but my senior year was the first year that Dollinger Field opened. That was your sophomore year that you became the starting quarterback of Cathedral Prep. So were you the starting quarterback for the home opener of Dollinger Field as well? Are you the first win
Yes,
at the
sir.
Dollinger Field? Yes.
I was sophomore year, yeah, and our first game at Dollinger Field was against Central. I'll never forget it.
Yep.
Because you grow up and going to vets was like a big thing in grade school. Everyone always wanted to go to the prep game on Friday night, no matter who they were playing, no matter what other game was going on in the city. Everyone had to make sure they, check out, the prep game, whoever prep was playing, and then when we get to sophomore year, and then they built Dollinger Field, which is a beautiful, beautiful facility. That was super special. I remember that like it was yesterday. Unfortunately, didn't get to score the first touchdown in the stadium. That was De'Aris Williams, who reminds all of us all the time. I love De'Aris. But I did score, I think, the second or third one, but that was an awesome game. Boys were, vibes were high. We were humming all over the field. I think we had a pretty dominant win that day, but you never forget those moments like that. And to see what Dollinger Field, and now I want to, make sure I'm correct here, but the Haggerty Event Center, I think that's what it's called still, just seeing what that's turned into, for other sports. And, you got the Olympic sized pool, the gymnasium as well. It's just awesome to see what that's developed into.
Yeah, the the kids nowadays, they have no idea. They're just so lucky to have those facilities. And we all remember, and I'm sure you did too, swimming in the old prep pool,
Yep.
back in gym class and doing that.
Yep.
And now the facility that's there for their swim teams and water polo. But they're making use of it. Our swim team, again, another state championship this past year for the boys. I mean,
Love
they're
that.
winning, so it's working.
Oh yeah, let's go. The slight improvements, it's, increasing those times on those relays, but that's awesome to hear, man. I'm glad it's getting put to use, and I'm sure they, very much appreciative of it and everything. But yeah, I grew up in the McDonald's Field era and Vet
Yeah.
Stadium, so Dollinger Field was like a blessing for us, just having to walk right up from school after practice and stuff. So that's awesome.
So Damion, when did football start to realize, when did you start to realize that, you were not just a good football player, but you might have potential to take this to play at the next level? When did that start to form in your mind that A, you had the talent, B, you had the desire, and C, the work ethic to make that stuff happen? And you really started to take your football life pretty seriously to start to put yourself in a position to go on to a Michigan State. What was that like for you?
Yeah, so funny enough, I was raised in a household that were all Steelers fans. So my football passion started at a very young age. I can just recall, running around my grandmother's house and, running into her couch, throwing the ball up to myself just over and over and over, always trying to, play football over on Maple Street from pole to pole, from sun
Yep.
up until, the lights came on. So, football was always a part of my life, and I was naturally good at it early on. I was always a little bigger than everyone, sometimes over the weight limit, which caused me to work up and play against a higher competition and older kids early on. So that kind of helped my development, speed up a little bit. But I would say eighth grade was really my turning point when I realized that, like, oh, I can kind of turn this into something. Because I played running back my entire life, but then I started hitting my last few growth spurts. So I started to become pretty tall, and I didn't lose my speed at all, but my acceleration a little bit. When you're 6 foot back there at running back playing with all 5'7" kids, you're still moving. It's hard to get you down, but you're not as quick as you once were. And funny enough, Coach G, Grahowski, who he was like,
Yep.
let me see you throw really quick. So I threw the ball, and he was like, from this day forward, you will be playing quarterback. So yeah, that was the year in eighth grade when I made the move to quarterback. And it was also, like I was saying, right around the same time I hit the 6 feet tall kind of mark when everyone else was still growing. And
Yeah.
that having that kind of frame gave me the early inkling that I was blessed with, the right build for the game. And then playing college, honestly, it wasn't even on my radar back then. Nobody in my family, I have a super small family. It's my grandmother, grandpa, and mother. So no one had really gone to college. So those conversations just weren't happening, at home. They weren't materializing then. It wasn't really until my sophomore year, like you were mentioning, your senior year, when I became the starting quarterback on varsity, when, playing at the next level became a real tangible goal. And then colleges started getting interested in me. So that's kind of when it was building up for me. And then, my sophomore and junior year was always pretty, I'd never give myself a pat on the back. I'd say it was okay. I would show glimpses there, but the consistency was never really there. And then senior year, after we lost to Grove City junior year, that left a sour taste in everyone's mouth, just the way we lost in the D10 championship my junior year. That gave us the motivation going in the senior year, where everything kind of just took off from there. I became, the #1 quarterback in Pennsylvania, top 3 recruit in Pennsylvania, a 4-star, and then it kind of just became like a oh wow moment, and it just
Yeah.
kind of took off from there. So that's when I started realizing.
Yeah, it's cool to hear that progression. It was something where you've always had a good head on your shoulders, and you've had, great guidance from your grandparents and your mom, I know. And you combine that with then obviously having Mike Mishler and all the other coaches and support staff that were a part of your journey, kind of help guide you and lead you through that process of you starting to get interest letters, as a sophomore, and you have your junior
Never
year.
forget. Yep.
And then all of a sudden your senior year comes and here you are, top quarterback in Pennsylvania and all these different accolades that you got. it's got to be pretty surreal as like a 17-year-old kid and 16-year-old kid to get that much, national attention at that point. Here you are in Erie, Pennsylvania, just playing a game you love.
Exactly. And honestly, that's exactly how it was. Like the attention and going back to earlier, like I said, I'm very close chested, so I keep things just close to me. Don't really like bringing attention on myself. And I'll never forget signing day after I started getting a bunch of offers and everything. And I finally decided I wanted to go to Michigan State, and Coach Mish's like, we have to have this big press conference and this and that. And I kind of looked at him. I was like, I do not want to do that. I just kind of want to have like a silent commitment, And so he was like, all right, that's new, but that's fine with me. And so that's what we did. And, it kind of just took shape after that. And then, eventually we got Delton Williams to come, join me in Michigan State. So that just the leadership I was given and everything really like prepped me to be ready for that moment. But yeah, it just kind of took off. And then, my self accolades on the side, even our team, just becoming the 17th best team in the country at that point. It just was everything, we worked for, and it was awesome to see our senior year stamped off at the state championship.
It's amazing. I just got chills hearing you say that, because it doesn't just happen,
No,
it doesn't just happen.
It really doesn't. And honestly, I think if we would have won the District 10 championship junior year and then, had like a first round playoff exit or second round playoff exit, I think that would have been the worst thing for us. We almost had to go through some adversity. My sophomore year, we made it to the Final Four and then lost to Bishop McDevitt. They had like Noah Spence and all these D1 guys, and we were winning 21-3 at halftime, and then eventually lost 24-21. So that, that kind of led, like it was always like we were that close. So that's just how life is, and you don't see it in the time. You're so young and so naive to the world, but some of those like hardships that we went through, even if you ask anyone, our sophomore and junior year really just shaped the course of a lot of our lives. And so that was awesome, being able to go out with a bang that senior year and then carry everyone through college and, now they're young, professional life. So.
Yeah, adversity is going to happen to all of us, and sports is a great way to learn those lessons and how you handle it.
Exactly.
Yeah. Before we move on to some of the questions I have for you about your time at Michigan State too, just wanted to ask one more question about prep. Looking back, what lessons did prep teach you that really stayed with you, and not just the sports aspect, but from the whole roundedness of being a part of that school community and that environment?
Yeah, prep taught me, the foundational principles that helped guide me at every step of my career. Like I said, my mom had me when she was 16. So a lot of like my mentors and, everyone who've guided me started right when I stepped foot at prep, and above all, it showed me, that life and leadership are always bigger than yourself. I never realized how big, being a quarterback was. Like I said, I didn't become one until 8th grade. And then you slowly start seeing and realize how you have to carry yourself each and every day, how you have to treat everyone. I just learned how to lead effectively alongside others, how to treat everyone with the same level of respect, regardless of their title, how critical authentic relationship building is, in everything you do. And then most importantly, my time, as a Rambler helped me build a personal relationship with God. And that kind of grounded me in my faith, those values, faith, humility, respect, and servant leadership are the same exact tools I rely on every single day. It translated from football and into my everyday role, now as a partner services coordinator, when I'm working with all of our corporate partners, it doesn't matter if I'm talking to one of our corporate partners who's spending $500,000 or, one that's, spending $5,000. You still treat everyone the same, and that, that takes care of itself.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's great to hear about those things, those values that really, resonated with you. And, to anybody listening right now and they hear it, it's like, that's the example of being a great, representative of prep is, the man that you are today, and just being able to talk about those traits and those values that you got from those 4 years of walking the halls of prep and what it means to us. And, being an alum also myself, of course, it's just something that you carry with you the rest of your life, is just from those experiences of being a student at Cathedral Prep. And then, for those of us that play sports, you get a little further on with that, with me being in baseball and you in football and whatnot. Those are great life lessons that we get to carry on with us. Your time then at Prep, I'm sure it went quick. You had four great years, and then we've been talking earlier in the episode about then the recruiting process started. You get these letters, and I'm sure you had places from all around the country just hoping they can get Damion Terry in as their quarterback for their team. Can you talk to us about what Michigan State brought to the table that led to you choosing to be a Spartan?
Yeah, absolutely. And some of the most fulfilling and rewarding moments is, as a recruit is starting when you start getting those first couple of letters. And I'll never forget mine, like starting to get some from Alabama, Florida. That's my dog yawning down here, trying to get my attention. But yeah, I'll never forget those moments. And then that's when football starts to get real for you. But honestly, like in the best way possible, I did not like the recruiting process. My phone was always blowing up, and like I was telling you, I don't really like attention. And then, the absolute worst part about me, and this goes back to, how Coach Mish and, how he was, what he was instilling, the morals into his team, and his students and stuff is whether if I was offered a scholarship, no matter what, if I was deciding to go to that school or not, Coach Mish, it's a big deal to him for you to tell everyone who offered you, like, hey, I really appreciate you giving me a scholarship and, giving me the opportunity to pursue your university, but I'm going somewhere else. So when I finally decided to commit to Michigan State, I'll never forget having to call like Pitt, Illinois, West Virginia, all these other schools. And they're like, hey, Damion, funny enough, we're just getting, we were just talking about you, how we're fired up, for you to be a part of our team in the future, potentially. And I'm like, what, coach, actually, that's why I'm calling you. I'm actually committing to Michigan State. So those were, like some of those hard conversations that, you have to have at a young age that eventually, like, at the time I didn't notice it, but are just prepping you for, business everyday conversations. So at the time I was like, I am not looking forward to this, but now looking back on it, that's like a vital aspect, and something that was very important to Coach Mish, very important to me as well. But falling back on the Michigan State part, I'll never forget my recruiting coordinator, Mark Staten, coming the first day. He's this massive man. He was 6'7". He was our offensive line coach. And his personality was just so affectionate. It almost seemed you would have to go down to Coach Mish's office, and he was like this larger than life man. His personality was just glowing. And I knew right then and there, kind of like, oh, I really want to see what Michigan State is about. And the minute I stepped foot on campus, it just felt like home. And that's all I needed to see. Big Ten institution. It was the perfect distance for me. It was about 5-hour drive. You just have to go take 90, go through Cleveland, Toledo, and then you're pretty much, in Detroit and East Lansing. So with Coach Staten, Coach Mark D'Antonio, everything I saw in Coach Mish and Prep, I saw in those two men. They led their program the exact same way, and they just hit it out the park. They were awesome to my mother, my grandmother, my grandpa at the time. My little sister was super young, and they were still awesome with her on my recruiting visit. Just everything they showed me was enough I needed to see, and I made the right choice at the end of the day. And looking back on it, that was, following up with my 4 years at Prep with my 5 years at Michigan State was the best 9 to 10 years of my entire life. So it's awesome to see, and those friends and lifelong relationships you make really last the eternity.
And I can't go the length of this episode without giving a shout out to Tom Dance also. He's also a fellow Spartan of yours and Prep class of 2004. I still keep in touch with him pretty regularly. But I know if he's listening to this, he's going to, if I didn't give him a shout out, he'd be mad. So definitely have to give him a shout out.
Shout out to Tom. It's one of my greatest mentors as well. I always follow him, try to keep up as much as possible, but always seeing him on Instagram with all of he has such a beautiful family, and all of his kids are excelling, starting to, become, kind of, like how he was and how I was, in sports right now. So it's awesome seeing Tom, and Tom is also a great mentor and extension to have in East Lansing, and all ultimately made that decision when I decided to commit even better with that connection, Coach Mish, when he introduced us. So yeah, shout out to you, Tom.
Well, that's great to hear. And it's really neat, to kind of hear your perspective as you walk through that recruiting process and trying to navigate those difficult conversations with other programs. Not easy for a 17, 18-year-old kid to have to call coaches and, these people trying to get you to come to their school to kind of, break their hearts a little bit to let them pick somewhere else. But great life lessons and things that obviously you can carry over, as you mentioned, into the business world to be able to do that. So you played during one of the great stretch at Michigan State. And it was mentioned in your bio about the success that you guys had during your time there. I guess from your perspective, having lived that, being a part of that team every day and being a part of that culture, what kind of led to making those teams so special? What was going on behind the scenes that you really are going to carry with you and value, when you look back on those years?
Yeah, and it's crazy looking back and realizing now, even with myself, because I've shot myself in the foot over this the past couple of years, because whenever anyone asks me, how's Michigan State going to be this year? I'm like, we're back, we're good, we're going to the Big Ten championship, this and that. But, looking back on 2013 to 2018, that was, kind of referred to now as like the glory days of MSU football. But, behind the scenes, Coach D'Antonio, it was all about mindset. And what made those teams special, was learning about his selfless leadership, putting the team above yourself and completely buying into a common goal. And that ultimately helped me, as a career backup. I only started one game. I played in a ton of games, but, only starting one, I think that like hits the nail on the head, putting the team above yourself and just completely buying into the common goal. When everyone operates with that level of commitment, something beautiful happens. I saw that my senior year, and I saw that through my years, throughout my career at Michigan State as well. And I learned so much from Coach D'Antonio, all of my teammates. You got all these guys coming from 50 states, for one common goal. It's honestly a beautiful thing to see materialize, when it gets stamped with something, that you're rewarded on. And, all of those lessons stay with you for life. MSU football has such a rich foundation, and I'm really looking forward, to seeing the future of the program under Coach Fitzgerald. One of the first things he did, which I thought was awesome when he took over the job from Northwestern, is he put all of the quarterbacks in a group chat. So it didn't matter if you were Kirk Cousins, Brian Hoyer, Connor Cook, Drew Stanton, an NFL guy, or if you were someone like me, Tyler O'Connor, Peyton Thorne, someone that maybe didn't go to the NFL but played a little bit in college. He put us all in a group chat. It's like, hey, I really need to hear your guys' feedback. I'm trying to bring, right this ship, bring MSU football back. So it's nice seeing, that those same details, the small finite details that Coach D'Antonio was instilling, into his team, during those 10 years of the glory days that Coach Fitzgerald is kind of chasing now. It's awesome to see. And, hopefully we get some Spartan green back in college football playoffs and in the Big Ten championships.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's so cool to hear about, that culture and that mindset of what made it so special. And those things carry so much weight. It's cool to hear you talk about, because you hear your excitement about what Michigan State means to you, and just being included in a group text like that, and just hearing, your passion come through about what it means to be a Spartan. This we're not going to dive into a conversation about transfer portal and all those kind of things. But I remember seeing, I know
this would be like 3 hours long.
Right. Well, I remember reading an article a handful of years ago where somebody asked you a question about, the transfer portal, and do you wish that was more common in your era so you could have went and played somewhere else? And your response was, no, I loved my time at Michigan State, and I don't regret it for a minute. And sorry if I'm messing up the quote or, the full article context, but I remember reading that a few years ago, and that just stuck with me. And it just was, to me, like signified who you are as a person and character. And now hearing you talk about what Michigan State meant to you in terms of the program, it just kind of connects the dots of why that made sense to hear that quote coming from you.
Exactly, Jimmy. And I think, it's so easy to be like, oh yeah, I would have transferred, I would have done this and that. But like everything I needed to learn through or needed to figure out about myself and go through in life happened in those years when, transferring, it would have been a short-term fix. I would have been, awarded maybe better playing time or this and that, but none of that would have, how do I want to say it? None of that would have fulfilled myself.
Mm.
Everything I needed to figure out and, still figure out about myself happened through those hardships and, figuring it out and working it through at Michigan State. And I'm always like a be where your feet are person. And, sometimes things just happen that way. I could point to me having 5 surgeries or this or that or not working out, but all of those are just like excuses or this and that. Like I chose to go to Michigan State. What happened over that 5 years was meant to be. That was God's plan for me. And, who can fight that? So, honestly, I feel like I left there a better person and all of that needed to happen. And I wouldn't change anything for, anything. I had some of the greatest mentors, some of the best teammates and connections that would carry me for a lifeline. And I feel like a lot of college kids nowadays, not to stay on this topic, but they're just transferring and they're not really sticking with the school. I know even me as a fan of Michigan State now, I don't look at the fall roster until August because I'm like, if I look at it in January, half of these kids may not even be here. And I feel like a lot of kids are losing that community aspect and where they can make a difference in other ways outside of football. So I think just transferring all the time doesn't really give you the satisfaction you're ultimately looking for. You just got to stick it out and figure it out yourself.
Yeah, no, 100%. I mean, I've always loved the game of college football more so even than the NFL. And now that the transfer portal and NIL and all this stuff's here, it kind of is watering down that same love I had for the game. That
Right.
2013 to 2018, those years watching college football were some of the best years, and I get it. Things are evolving and we're not going to talk about all of those complexities here on this episode of the podcast, but I just had to say, hearing your passion about Michigan State and, thinking about that comment from that article really stuck with me and just says who you are as a person. It's a great lesson that if there are high school or college kids listening to this episode because they saw your name on this, hopefully that's resonating with them and impacting them a little bit to think about the direction of their future as well.
Absolutely. And then one last thing on it, and because after 2014, Coach Narduzzi, our defensive coordinator, he actually went to Pitt. So like nowadays, that's like a given, like a big quarterback prospect, behind a guy who's coming back another year, as in Connor Cook, coming back for his 3rd year now. And when everyone is thinking or expecting me to start, like automatically, like if that was nowadays, I think no matter what, I would have had to go to Pitt. Like that's just like the natural transition now with the common NIL era, I guess. So it's honestly weird to think about, and I'm glad that happened, and I was able to, just stick that through. And I'm a Spartan through and through, so I wouldn't want to change anything for the world. So.
Yeah, I love that. No, that's so cool to hear. And obviously, you can look back to the man you are today and, point to those things with, whether it was your time at Prep or, it's your time at Michigan State and how those contributed into being who you are. And we mentioned in your bio, you've had a very, accomplished young corporate professional life as well. You first started off right here in Erie. I mentioned shout out to Jeremy Young. He's currently on our board of directors. He's been serving for a number of years now. I've gotten to know him very well. Great guy, as I'm sure you've got to, to know him as well. But when you came back to Erie and you started now, working in the corporate world and, you're not an athlete anymore, kind of what was that transition like? And what did you learn during that first year working in corporate America with Jeremy?
Yeah, so at first, transitioning away from football is, one of the hardest adjustments any athlete, not just football players, any athlete has to make, because when you've poured your heart into the game for so long, for me, I first put on a shoulder pad and helmets when I was 4 years old. Your identity kind of gets wrapped up in it. And then when the playing days end, it's not just like some transition phasing out period. It kind of happens abruptly. So you suddenly have to figure out, who you are without a helmet on, and where to channel, some of that competitive drive. And none of it's ever going to be the same as playing sports, as we all know. And for me, the transition was, all about redefining my purpose. Sports was my entire life. That's why I kind of in my professional career, you can see like I had my degrees in advertising, but I never had a job really until after my playing career. So it was a lot of figuring it out. I didn't have like someone in my immediate family who had the same, kind of career as me. So everything I did, I was kind of just making my own stone, just, creating a new path for myself. So the transition wasn't always easy, but like I said, but I realized, the lessons that football taught me, work ethic, handling adversity, teamwork, and leadership aren't just football skills, they're ultimately life skills. And then like learning how to shift that energy into my professional career and kind of business ventures gave me like a new field to compete on. And then so when I was coming back home to Erie to work at Federal Resources under Jeremy, it was kind of just like a match made in heaven at the time. Jeremy's one of like my closest friends. I actually got Nick Dabowski, who's my lifelong best friend, to work there as well when I ended up leaving FRC. But that was like an incredible transition for me into the business world. At the time, Jeremy was just moving his company back from the Virginia area, Washington, D.C. area, back into Erie. He wanted to give back into Erie. And we kind of just met. I honestly forget how we met, but it was fate. I think I was meeting with John Persinger at the time. I think I met with you as well during this period, like right after college. And Persinger got me in contact with Jeremy Young, which was awesome. And Jeremy, if you don't know him, everyone needs to meet a Jeremy in this world. He is honestly one of the best guys. He's a great person to be around, better leader, great businessman, and just someone you want to kind of learn under and, just learn about how he became who he is. And during that year, Jeremy just really taught me how to operate in a high stakes, professional environment. I've never seen anything like that. So, coming into an office, sitting at a desk, is skills that, translate to all of work life. And, everything from strategic account management and relationship building with customers, to execute decision making. Coming off of a football career, it was huge to see how discipline, in the preparation I learned on the field translated directly into the corporate world. And that year gave me the professional foundation and confidence I needed, to navigate the next steps of my career.
Well, it's good to hear that you were able to help Dubs get a job there too, because he's still working there.
Yeah, he's killing it. They've since, they've gotten bigger offices, and FRC's doing really well now. Nick's moved up the ladder. I honestly look at him as Jeremy's right-hand man. They'll call me when they're out and about sometimes. So they're awesome, and FRC's doing really well. But yeah, Dubs loves it as well. So he's doing well.
Yeah, it's great seeing him. I'll just throughout my few years being back at Prep, or my 5 or 6 years being back at Prep, I'll see Nick at different events, whether it's for Prep or it's a networking thing or whatever it is. And he always seems like he's doing great for the company and doing well. I think were you golfing in the outing for the Bomba the first year when I hit Nick with a golf ball? Were you there for that?
Jimmy, I forgot all about it. Yes, I was there. I was sitting right next to him in the car. Oh my goodness. I forgot all about that. I mean,
we'll just leave it at that. We don't talk about where I was for the shot, how bad it was. Might have been one of the last times I played golf since, but
usually that's me hitting him when we golf, so don't feel bad at all. He can take it. He's Dubs. He's
a tough guy.
Yeah. Exactly. So it was more so funny. I'll just never forget. It just came screaming down. Oh man, it's all good, man. It's golf. I live in Florida now. I'm trying to get better. I keep telling myself that, and every time I think I figured something out, I play worse the next round. So it happens.
That's how it goes. Yeah. Us, athletes, we think we should just figure golf out very easy because that's how, maybe other sports were to us in the beginning.
Exactly.
Golf's not like that.
Golf is like half mental, probably more, honestly. And
yeah,
like I said, it's such a mental match. It's a game within the game, but no, that is hilarious, Jimmy. I forgot all about that.
Well, and speaking of being an athlete, so you couldn't get that itch out. You had to go up to Boston where you started a new position there for, was it Boston Beer Company?
Yes,
but while you were in Boston, you qualified and ran the Boston Marathon. Congratulations, and tell us about that.
Whew, Jimmy, right when you think football is hard and working out for football, the Boston Marathon was the hardest thing I've ever done in my entire life. So I was super fortunate. Funny enough, I ran it with two other prep alums, James Trisilla and Joseph Hampy. And we all lived in Boston at the time. They were telling me how they had this great idea to run in the Boston Marathon. So I'm like, I'm not really a long distance runner, but that sounds awesome. I'm working at Boston Beer during this time, and my job actually sponsors it. So they offer 20 free bids every single year. And me, I'm like, I got some friends, running in it. Let me see what I can do. I'm not actually going to get picked, right? So I throw my name in there. Jimmy, tell me why I was the first name picked. We had Boston Beer Company's massive. There was like 2,500 employees, and we get on a Zoom call, and I am the first name they pull. So I'm like, oh my goodness, this got real.
And what was the lead time? When did you, how far away was that from when it actually was happening?
That's a great question. I want to say we found out around December. It was around a holiday thing, and the race was in April. And
so pretty quick.
It was pretty quick, but Boston Beer was awesome. They provided you like an Excel document of like a training program to do. I thought I was going to do that. I think the longest run I ever did at the time was like I did a 9-mile peninsula run down on the peninsula in Lake Erie. But besides that, I would run 2 miles every single day. But yeah, I won the bid. So I was like, all right, this is awesome. But now I got to, get my running shoes on. But, on a personal level, though, that race became so much more than just, like a workplace perk. My uncle had died earlier that year. So like every step of that 26.2 miles was dedicated to his memory. Going into it, like I said, I've never done a formal running event in my life besides football. So taking on one of the most iconic marathons in the world was pretty daunting and honestly kind of stupid looking back on it. But physically, like I said, it was hands down the hardest thing I've ever accomplished. And crossing that finish line, I was exhausted, emotionally drained, but it meant everything to me. And it just goes to show you, once you put your mind to anything, to life, your body will take you there. Putting your mind to it's probably half the battle. And I did that and was able to cross. I got my picture that I'm blowing up in my man cave of me crossing the line. So the experience was second to none. It was remarkable. It was the 10-year anniversary, actually, of the Boston bombing incident. So that was awesome as well. Some of the people who aren't here with us anymore, like their neighborhoods ran on their behalf from that tragedy and everything. So it was awesome. I'll never forget that day for the rest of my life. But I'm one and done. The shoes are over the telephone pole now and retired. But it was amazing, man.
Yeah, what a cool experience. I mean, again, I've kept, obviously us going way back, I've kind of kept in touch, either through social media or I'll see things in, the prep magazines or the paper about things. I remember seeing you completed the Boston Marathon, and I wasn't surprised at all, just being who you are, that's something you did. So it's great hearing your comments on how much you actually dreaded it, and that was it.
It was tough, man. I gained appreciation because, you drive past people and you're like, people actually enjoy running, but it's not so much the enjoying part. It's for the accomplishment and how you feel after. So I honestly gained like a much better appreciation for people like that and respect, because it's super challenging, super hard, and you really have to push yourself the whole, however long you're doing it the entire time. So it just gives you a new perspective on life. And me, I'm always open to new things. Maybe not 26.2 mile long marathons anymore, but it was awesome. And, I can always say I did it. I have my medal, and it's something I'll remember the rest of my life. But it was challenging. I'd be lying if I said it wasn't. But like I said, if you put your mind to it, it could do remarkable things.
Yeah, I don't know if you ever listened to David Goggins, or you might end up trying to yourself at a 100-mile marathon at some point here.
I would not do David Goggins. I love him, by the way, but that man is different. He is.
Oh, yeah. I like to listen to him, his motivation stuff, when I like work out or go for runs, and it's all, like you said, it's all mental. So it's like, all right, if I just push myself, this is what it's really all about. Is that
He's
part
the
of
best
it.
for Wednesdays and hump day, when the week may be dragging or you were slammed Monday, Tuesday, and you need extra pick me up. So.
All right, I got a few more questions for you.
Okay.
They're going to be less reflective on your past, but more so to provide some value for our listeners, right? So you've had some great experiences through state championship at Prep, college athletics, corporate America, running the Boston Marathon. Impart some wisdom on us. What advice would you give for people who want to pursue success at a high level?
Yeah, absolutely. Whether you're in a locker room, a corporate office, front office, the core ingredients for success are all identical across all formats. Across college athletics, coaching, corporate sales, and professional sports, it always comes down to the people, the culture, and the execution. In every single one of those environments, you have to know how to build genuine relationships with the people inside those buildings. You have to learn how to communicate effectively with different personalities, learning how to talk to people, learning how, their communication style is big, and you have to hold yourself accountable to the common goal. I think that's the biggest thing. Day-to-day life and everything, it's easy to just focus on your own agenda, your own goals. But once you kind of have like that selfless servant leadership and, you just put your problems to the side, focus on the common goal, I think it always pays out in the long run. The stakes and the uniforms may change, but the need for selfless leadership, adaptability under pressure, and relentless work ethic, never does. If you focus on serving others and doing your job at a high level, you can win any venue, any game, any front office, any presentation, anything. So I think just being you is enough in itself. There'll only be one of you. So it doesn't matter whether you're in a locker room, front office, or whatever you may be doing in your life, being you is all you need. And like I said, just be a servant leader, and recognize that it's bigger than you. I think that's all you need to know, and that'll carry you to where you need to go and lead you into the right rooms and shake the right hands that you need to make your professional career, a success.
What I love about that answer you just gave is it's not about, athletic skills. It's not about maybe being super smart. Like your answer is all around decisions that each and every one of us can make to either improve ourselves to be an effective communicator, or to continue to hone in on those areas. If you are a strong communicator, be better at doing those types of things. I know I can speak personally from my own professional development over the last decade that, I've been working. It's like you just kind of stack wins, you take losses and you learn from them, and you continue to grow yourself to be the person that you need to be. So I love your answer, because anybody listening can do the things that you just talked about.
Exactly. We're all instilled with us. We're all children of God. We're all the same. I may be 6'5", someone else may be 6 foot. None of that matters once, you're working for something and working towards a goal bigger than yourself. And like I said, that the selfless leadership, that is, I'm so big on it. I've probably said it so many times throughout this hour, but, I think when you can put others above yourself, it naturally focuses you to become your best version of yourself, so that you can hold everyone accountable. So like I said, we're all equipped with it. Whether you have a strength or a weakness, it'll eventually come up, but just know what you need to learn in that time until it comes up again is, they'll take care of it.
Yeah, I love how many times you brought up servant leadership, either talking about mentors you've had or just your philosophy on how you've carried yourself. It's a great word that people need to hear more and more, especially in this day, for people to recognize their value and what they need to contribute to the world, and within our faith environment too, and what we need to do as men of God and leaders to be able to spread His word too.
Absolutely.
Okay, another question for you. All right, so I guess it's a little reflective in a sense, but more so something that we can learn from you.
Okay.
All right, if you could sit down with yourself when you were at Cathedral Prep, let's say that freshman, sophomore year, those time, Damion, what advice would you have gave yourself about, your future, knowing what you know now, of course?
Yeah, this is a great question, Jimmy. I think my advice would probably be pretty simple. It would be to spend time with yourself, become your own best friend, and invest in your personal growth early. As you go through life, you'll meet countless people, And knowing who you are keeps you from falling into the trap of being like a people pleaser, and building that internal foundation gives you the clarity and tools, to handle every relationship authentically while also staying true to your best self. I think, kind of like in looking back on my career, I, not in a bad way, but almost to there were times in my career where I needed to assert myself a little bit, and I was just, a little too team driven. I would almost say, like I would not make myself become less, but maybe not stick up or speak up, or, try to like assert myself a little more in situations, because I'd be like, oh, I'm going to hurt this person's feelings, or, oh, Tyler's also competing. Like, I want him to, do well as well. So maybe I just don't go as hard. You know what I mean? But I think if you spend time with yourself, become your own best friend before you start meeting a bunch of people, because like I was saying, you can't become your best version of yourself if you're not, attacking the common goal. And I felt like at some points maybe, I was just too worried about how other people were maybe perceiving me, or, what they thought of me, and Twitter was becoming a thing. So I wasn't like as grounded as I wanted to be early. That changed probably my junior year of college. But early on, if I could just give advice to my young self, it would be, love yourself, become your own best friend before you start loving others, and, making friends with everyone, because there's no one that I don't get along with. I can get along with anyone, any different culture, I'm good at that. But at the same time, that could be your biggest fault, because you can lose track of your own self. So that would be my biggest advice I would give to my young self.
Yeah, that's great. So many kids, and obviously now in the social media, age that it is that we're in. To your point, Twitter was just starting to be a thing. Not to make it sound old, but was just starting to be a thing. I remember I had just got a smartphone when I was in college, which is just crazy to think. I mean, it's not that
Crazy.
long ago, but it
Yeah,
is.
seriously.
Um,
8-year-olds are getting iPhones, it's just how fast the world's changed.
Yeah, that's gonna sound funny, but I remember tweeting off of my, like, I don't want to call it a dumb phone, but my flip phone or whatever it was. I would tweet by texting to Twitter, and then it would tweet it out from my account. And so it's just funny to hear you talking about that, and just understanding that we really do need to take those moments to really just honestly spend time with God, right? Just
Yes.
spend time praying, spend time appreciating Him and His Word and what His Son Jesus did for us. And you start to grow your own self-image and appreciate yourself more when you realize whose you are and who made you. So those components I resonate with a ton from what you're saying, is that, yeah, before we're just going to try to appease what everybody else wants us to be and do, spend more time with yourself and spend time with the Lord, and learning who He's made you to be.
Yes, absolutely, Jimmy. I couldn't have said it any better. And it's so hard, nowadays. All, comparison is the thief of joy. And I feel
Yeah.
like that's all you see now is just, oh, this and that is going on social media. And it's bad now, but even like you said, it makes us seem ancient, like prehistoric, honestly. But like, that wasn't really a thing, like the social media norms and everything. So
Yeah.
you saw your name on Twitter back then, it was like, oh my goodness. Like, no one
Yeah.
really knew how to like circumvent that. But, nowadays there's a lot more resources going into, not even young athletes, but just students in general. So really, yeah, just going back to the point, just really be yourself. It's all right to be yourself. Become your best friend. Um, Build your relationship with Christ and God. And like I said, invest in your personal growth early, and you'll be good to go.
Last question for you.
Yes, sir.
So this is fun to talk about, kind of bring it back around to prep now, where we'll kind of start to end this podcast. But your sister's going into her senior year. You were mentioning to me earlier before we started recording. Um, and you're obviously a part of the legacy of Cathedral Prep, not just from your accomplishments, but also being an alumnus of the school. When you think about the rich history between Prep and Villa, of course, and just what it means to be a Rambler. What does that mean to you today? To really kind of think now back to just the fact that you are an alum of the school, and what does Cathedral Prep mean to you?
Being a Rambler, being a Cathedral Prep alumnus, man, it means everything to me. Every time I'm back home in Erie to this day, people still recognize me and know me as, "Yeah, are you Damion or are you the Prep QB?" It's a title and legacy that will forever be attached to who I am. And I wear that with immense pride. Prep gave me the foundation for everything I've achieved, both on and off the field. Beyond the football and the lessons learned, the greatest gift, prep gave me was a lifelong brotherhood. Like I was mentioning earlier in the pod, I still talk every single day with some of my high school teammates and closest friends. And some of my absolute best friends today are the same exact guys I met in those hallways at Cathedral Prep. And I'll forever be grateful for everything, that community has done for me. I was just some innocent kid, growing up on West 31st Street and 29th Street, with a dream to just play sports. I didn't know if it was going to be basketball, baseball, football. I didn't know at the time. But once I started realizing what Cathedral Prep was, as we mentioned earlier, once I knew what I wanted to become, Cathedral Prep was everything to me. So being a Prep alumnus means everything to me. I have a Prep hat I always wear in Southwest Florida, Prep state championship hoodies and shirts and this and that. It means everything to me. Cathedral Prep was everything to me. The people that are still in my life from Cathedral Prep, it's such a blessing. I could go on and on about it, but the things that they've done for me and my family, and like now my sister's able to, eat those fruits as well. And she's going to be graduating next year. And it's just awesome, that foundation and what it's given me.
Yeah. It's great to hear. Your passion for prep obviously comes through very, very clear and very genuine too, of just what the school meant for you. And, it's neat to hear you talk about, West 31st and 29th, because obviously I grew up just one block over from you, over on Hazel, you're on Maple. And those same experiences of just coming from the city of Erie and going to a school like Prep and just what that meant to be a part of that culture. My dad coached at the school, but he didn't go to Prep, and no one in my family really went to Prep. So being the first one to be able to do that and just fall in love with that brotherhood and what the school community meant. And obviously through the years now, I mentioned your sister being there, having girls, part of the school's history and culture with the Villa connections and stuff. It's just a beautiful thing. And we're so blessed to have Prep here, in Erie. And we'll be here for another 100 years as well, and continue to do great things to serve our mission to the community.
Absolutely, man. And I'm looking forward to, when you're doing this 10 years from now and there's 100 more students that come through telling their stories and everything. And I think everyone knows of Prep in Erie, but once you actually experience it and go through it, it's unexplainable. Only if you go there and have experienced it, but that relationship around the Erie community and, will always be a pillar in the 814, and the amount of, young women and young men who they're turning out, to be successful, people who you want to follow ultimately is just, amazing. And the leadership at Prep is one of none, and, looking forward to many more years from now.
Yeah. Amen, Damion. Well, I have to say it's been so much fun catching up with you, man, and having this episode of the podcast. I mean, I hope our listeners really felt, they got value out of this. And from your words, they certainly did. You provided us with a lot of great wisdom nuggets and things from your experience that you're able to share with us, and really appreciate you taking the time, to be able to reflect on those years and be your first podcast too, to coming on the Rambler Podcast.
My first. So I'm looking forward to when you want to do episode 2, but I want to thank you again, Jimmy. This was awesome. We could honestly talk all day if we had the time. I know you're both busy men, but this was amazing, man. Looking forward to it. Looking forward to next time I'm in Erie to, catching up with you and, making a visit to the school and whatnot. But this was awesome, man. Thank you for having me again.
Yeah, absolutely, Damion. Thank you so much, and keep doing great things out there, okay?
Thank you, my man. Will do.